Today on the PIO podcast, I'd like to introduce John Pope. He's the PIO from the city of Newport Beach, California. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks for having me.
John, it's a pleasure having you on. You were a recommendation by a colleague, and I thought it was a great recommendation, by the way. So before we jump into all the questions I'm going to have for you today, walk us through your path on how you became the PIO for Newport Beach.
All right. Yeah, well, like a lot of PIOs, my path started in journalism. I was a newspaper reporter and had studied it in school and really thought that would be a great career. I was kind of naturally curious about the world and not especially interested in fiction writing. Um, I respect it, but it wasn't my forte. But I loved kind of the nonfiction. You get out, you interview people, you tell the story, you put it together with different facts you can collect. It was a really fun job. After I'd had about 10, 12 years in the field and just was hard to see a future in it. Unfortunately, the way that the newspaper industry was going, and that's a whole topic for a different time, is where we're at with that. But for me personally, as I was raising a family, I thought I could maybe progress to be a city editor somewhere, work another 30 hours a week for an extra 5,000 a year. Didn't seem like a great path. So I started to think about, okay, well, maybe I could do this public relations stuff that a lot of journalists get into. And I was fortunate to land in a government agency because I feel like it was kind of the smoothest transition from a journalist role. And when I look, so I've never really been part of an agency or a private PR company. All my experience has been in government. But I found that we are able to be kind of like the journalist for our agency. And that's why I think it felt like not such a foreign fit, where I could come on board and be the storyteller for the agencies that I work in. Unlike sort of the political, scandal movers and shakers, those types, we're not asked to lie. We're not asked to spin. At least in my experience, we've been asked to tell the truth. And if we can't tell the full truth, we can explain why. So it's, maybe it's real estate, maybe it's personnel, there's a short list of things, but otherwise, yeah, we should be very as transparent as possible with the public. So my first job, which I had for the better part of a decade, was at the Port of Long Beach, which is the City of Long Beach Harbor Department.
Okay.
The ports are very much in the news right now. And
Yeah.
that was exciting. Through No matter what's happening in the economy, people look to the ports to see what's happening with the shipments. It's a very visible, visceral way to understand trade and kind of what's happening with the world. There were huge capital projects that the port was investing in, and all of those needed communications efforts and reaching out to the public in a way that the port had never done. So I felt like I was kind of learned what I needed to do there after about a decade. And I took a little bit of a diversion into the educational realm. So I was communications director for Long Beach City College. So that was kind of got my foray into education. Through it all, learned a lot and got to experience a very different culture, but realized that cities were more kind of my wheelhouse. And so I then, after a few years there, got a job as PIO for a small city of South Pasadena. And from there, made the jump to Newport Beach as the city PIO. I started about a little over 5 years ago, right before COVID hit. So I was just getting my feet wet here, and it was crisis calm then for the better of 2 years.
Right. So your typical day as of right now, what's your typical day in your role as the PIO for the city?
Yeah, so obviously it depends on what's going on. There are times when media issues will dominate a day. We'll have something come up where it could be a week or two that's spent just devoted to that issue. Otherwise, I'm working on different projects for different people. We have requests for, the mayor might need talking points for an event that he's going to. Our city manager needs me to update her PowerPoint for something she's doing. We have our weekly weekend review newsletter, it's called, which goes out from the city manager's office under her name. I put that together and tee that up for her to review every week. Managing the website, social media. So I'm very much a one-person shop here at the city, and I kind of enjoy that. I have contractors that I can use for different things. And so I have a video contractor that I work with very closely. Probably not a few days would go by without me talking to them, and we're kind of always have something in the works, and various projects. Right now we're working on wildfire outreach is still very top of mind.
Yeah.
We did get, fortunately, knock on wood, we didn't get hit like LA did with the recent stuff that happened, but it kind of became a spillover crisis for us because all of a sudden it becomes top of mind for everybody in Newport Beach, especially in high res zones, saying, well, what's the city doing? Are we prepared? Do we have enough water in our reservoir? So that's something that we've been working on for the last few months. So really, it's kind of issues management as they roll through. It's never a dull day.
John, I should have asked this before. Where is Newport Beach located for those that aren't aware where it's located, and what's the population?
Yeah. So there's about 85,000, give or take. So it's a mid-size city in Orange County. So it's nestled kind of in the middle of Orange County, right on the coast, of course, as most people know. So it's kind of south of Huntington Beach and north of Laguna. Those are kind of our famous neighbors. And so we have the largest recreational harbor on the West Coast. So boating is very much a strong part of the Newport Beach tradition. And it's funny how the city's developed over the years. It was very much centered around boating, and it was kind of sleepy for a lot of years. It was a sleepy beach community. And then at one point, the real estate values started to go up. People realized, like, hey, this is a great place to live. It becomes more competitive in terms of real estate. So there's definitely a new money element of people who have moved here because it has sort of this international reputation. It's kind of a prestige address. And then there's the other folks who have been here for years, couldn't afford their house at today's prices, but we're
Hmm.
sort of grandfathered in, part of the boating community. So I've definitely seen both in terms of the community and the representation that we've had on the city council. We've had a couple sort of, I'd say, upper middle class retirees who were those people, boating enthusiasts who bought at the right time. And then we've had the folks who, have more money, and it's a bit, I call it the Beverly Hills of Orange County. We have an outsized media presence because it does have that reputation.
So, how do you handle messaging for a city with got kind of a diverse population? You have your very well-to-do, and then you have your people that grew up there for their entire life, and they, like you said, they would never be able to live there had they not owned property prior.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we all are very aware that we are a place like Newport Beach is a high service city with high expectations. So people do pay a lot to live here. They pay a lot in property taxes, and that's our main source of revenue. So luckily, budget wise, we're very very stable. The city's always kind of had a fiscally conservative approach to kind of overhire in the good times, then have to cut back in the bad. Our tendency would be, as projects are needed, we would staff up with contractors and keep a smaller core staff. So that's kind of helped us weather some ups and downs. We didn't do too bad during COVID because, again, the property tax is a very stable thing. So the result of that is a high resource city where, we like to joke with the public works team, we never see a pothole. I mean, it's you drive around the city and you really notice it's very well maintained, and so there's a high expectation among residents, and no matter who they are, if they're the folks that have lived here a long time or they're new, they if they call us, they expect to get a person, they expect to get called back. So it's we don't have the excuse of, hey, we're understaffed. But that's also a good position to be in. We're not understaffed. We can provide that level of service. But at the same time, as employees, we know we need to kind of step up and provide that. I will say there is definitely a split over some of the state of California housing laws that have come in. So a big thing that all California cities are dealing with are the state basically said, hey, small wealthy communities cannot continue to zone new developments out of existence. You've got to make room for more housing because we need it throughout the state. So Newport Beach has been working with that, and we've had to explain to folks that are very against that, and those tend to be the old timers who remember the slower, sleepier city, that it can't be that in the future. It can't stay that way because we have mandates. And so that's going to be tough coming up. We have a new zoning plan under our general plan that conforms to the state. It wasn't too controversial. It was, I won't say that. It was fairly controversial when it got approved, but now we're going to see these plans coming forward where people really start to pay attention. They don't pay attention when it's just a zoning map, but when
Right.
it's
Until
a new development that's coming
right.
in, now they're paying attention. So that's going to be a challenge for us in the next couple of years.
So, John, how do you balance proactive storytelling with reactive crisis communications?
Good question. I really think of, so I've worked at agencies, and the port's a really good example. 20 years ago, the port was just getting crushed by community outrage over the amount of pollution that was being generated. There had really never been any controls over harbor port industrial operations. They were dirty ships that burnt the worst grade of fuel imaginable. This just oily sludge called bunker fuel. I mean, it's terrible. So they pull in with this. They burn this stuff while they're sitting at the dock. You've got these cargo movers zipping around. They were burning dirty fuel. It was really bad. So the port had to green up its operations. It had to tell the community what it was doing, and it had to kind of build that trust in an agency that had really kind of just flown under the radar for its whole existence. So I've worked at those agencies where they had to kind of step up their outreach. They had to build relationships with the community. Luckily, with Newport Beach, that's not so much the case. The city has a good relationship with its community. The fire department is stellar. We're a Class A or Class 1 fire department. The police department also has a great reputation. So really, from my perspective, it was really about maintaining a brand rather than building a brand.
Okay.
And so what I look at is how can we show the community that we are making good use of their tax dollars in a way that will help maintain that reputation, help them feeling good about the city that they have chosen to live in or do business in or what have you. And so that's kind of the way that I see my role is, wow, I came in under a well-established brand. We've got to make sure that we keep the water high in that reservoir of good community will.
Right. So, all right. So, what communication channels do you consider most effective for reaching your residents? Social media, traditional email, or traditional media?
Yeah. I think it's really a combination of all three for us. The newsletter that I mentioned, this was something that we started up. It goes out every Friday. It's called the Week in Review City of Newport Beach newsletter. And my goal with that, and we've done very well with our subscriber base for this newsletter, which is if you're not paying any attention to anything else, you can go on our website and click on different categories you want to subscribe to. So if, say, community development posts something on the general plan, you'll get that. But those are niches. The
Mhm.
development community may be interested in that, but your average citizen is not. So the week in review is kind of a way just once a week, Friday afternoon. Maybe it's a slower time for a lot of people at work. They're thinking about the weekend. Hey, give this a read. So that's kind of if you're doing nothing else but checking in once a week, this is our vehicle. We do very well on Instagram. I'm seeing the other channels kind of fading in terms of relevance. We're just not getting the engagement that we were a few years ago on Facebook, X, Nextdoor. I'm not sure. I still post there, but because it's a closed system, it's harder to tell kind of how things are doing. But I still will push out stuff on Nextdoor. Definitely in terms of engagement, interaction, sharing. Right now, it's Instagram, and so we've kind of pivoted a bit with Instagram to produce more short form videos, more photos, kind of tailored to that. Then we get, people always do appreciate when we send them to the website for more information. When I've gone out and kind of done surveys of the community, that just seems to be where they're at. Give me a very quick, headline, photo, and then let me know where to go for more information. We're very lucky as well to have active traditional media. We have the Orange County Register. We have a beat reporter who covers us and a couple other cities. Same with the Daily Pilot, which is a offshoot of the LA Times. And we have a great local publication called Stu News Newport. And, they cover local news online in a very thorough way. And the community reads it. So it's a great way to reach people.
So, let me ask you this: for traditional local media outlets like TV news, how is that? Because you guys are you're in between LA, you're in between San Diego, and some bigger municipalities. So, how does that work for you guys?
Yeah, so most of the LA media stations have TV broadcast reporters down here.
Okay.
And so they kind of cover Orange County as their beat. It's been great for now. I don't know how long that's going to last. You never know. It may come to the point where they pull back and then they just have LA folks coming down for things. I have a great relationship with the Orange County reporters from those stations, and they're out still covering news, and there's a lot of interest in the beach communities of Orange County in LA. You know, we're not that far. Most LA folks have been here for something or other. You know, our beaches are famous. And like I said, with Newport especially, we sort of have an outsized presence in the media. It seems like our stories get more attention because they're based in Newport. Yeah, it's
Gotcha.
just the way it is.
How do you prepare city staff or officials to speak to reporters at a press conference? What kind of prep are you doing for them?
Yeah, so generally the kind of coaching that we do, just run of the mill stuff in our business, you know, that's kind of the bread and butter. So I develop a lot of talking points for our folks. Uh, and mostly with our electeds. We have a pretty stable kind of director level folks. So I've worked with all of them for many years and have kind of coached them along the way on just how to be effective on camera. And so I find it's a bigger challenge for the electeds that are circulating through every few years because we do have term limits. So we're seeing more of that. But fortunate to work with a great set of electeds. They see themselves as coachable. They haven't come in with real big egos. They want to learn, and it's been great to be able to sit down with them and kind of walk through the differences between a broadcast interview versus a phone interview versus a situation where you might sit down with the reporter. And really just kind of some of the nuances of working with the media and how to kind of develop those relationships. So that's definitely a fun part of the job is offering that perspective on kind of how to work with the media and how not to work with the media. And I think that's a lot of people on the outside don't understand that there's some things
Right.
that you just don't do.
And have you had any history in the past where you've had to push back on a media narrative or clarify misinformation?
You know, there has been definitely. I think well, one of the funniest, not I shouldn't say funny. It was humorous initially, but the effect of it was actually very disturbing to people. It was comical to us because it just came out of nowhere. We were dealing with an incident at the port where there was some water that had been shut off to certain terminals. And so that's a big deal for those terminals. It's like, well, your bathrooms, your running water. That really impacts your operation. So it was a big localized deal that we were kind of working through. And all of a sudden, our phone started ringing with people asking about oil in the city's water supply and whether they needed to boil their water or not. And when I first got the call, I said, "What is that?" I just thought it was some nut job coming up with this. And then we quickly find out, oh, they heard this on one of the TV news reports. We don't know why. We don't know how. We were able to verify online. They wrote this and people broadcast it. Where did that come from? Why did it happen? No idea. I still don't know to this day. So I immediately called their news desk and said, that's absolutely not. Please correct it. They just said, okay, well, we'll take that down.
Never issued a correction though, right? Yeah.
Never issued a correction, just took the story down. So, so it creates a new crisis.
Oh yeah.
And it reminds me of, kind of one of those forgotten elements sometimes or overlooked elements in crisis communications plan is assign somebody to, be searching for your incident online, watching the news reports, actively consuming the media to see just because this stuff just pops up out of nowhere. And
Yeah.
it's crazy. So yeah, was it very concerning to people when all of a sudden they hear this and it's not coming from us? That should have come from us first if that were
Right.
the situation. So
Yeah.
that's another potential reputational hit is, well, why am I hearing this from my local news instead of from the source?
Yeah, and of course, there's not more information coming from them either, so they don't, that sometimes I think what you get a lot of times with some of the new media now, and my daughter's in the news media profession now, but I see this sometimes where you have reporters that they don't do their attribution is waning extremely poorly. They're not verifying sources of information. And so what they get is because the need is to push to digital as quickly as they can, that sometimes that information is nowhere near vetted where it should be.
Right. Yeah. And in that case, it was alarming. It wasn't just a benign thing. People were really worried. But I have to say, and again, I feel like I may be on the tail end of this, but I was very fortunate when I got to Newport Beach and I found out that we actually have some good beat reporters that I can work with. So I've been fortunate to have good beat reporters who want to get the story right. We have a couple broadcast folks that have been covering these communities for a long time. They know their stuff. They want to get it right. And same with print, which is not to say that I couldn't get some other media outlet printing stuff from who knows where and coming up with weird stuff. But for most of our coverage, I have people who know their profession and they check in with me. And so very rarely have I had to even had so much as a correction. And so, of course, you get uh, directors, and this is some advice that I give to younger PIOs as well, as you're always going to have somebody knock on your door internally saying, this piece is completely wrong. The media doesn't get it, blah, blah, blah. And they're angry about something. And
Mhm.
so I try to walk them through that story and say, okay, are there things that were worded in a way that you would not have worded them or chose to be worded? Or is it actually factually inaccurate? If it's factually inaccurate, let's drill down and maybe a correction is warranted. But did you just not like the way it was phrased? Did they leave out certain positive points about our agency that you would have liked to include? That's not correction worthy. Or did you not like the fact that they quoted someone from the opposing side
Right.
that you didn't like? And so, yes, factual correction, definitely a time. And I've never run into a reporter who pushes back on that. If you can show, "Hey, this was factually inaccurate," I say, hey, as far as the positive parts that you didn't see in there, that's an opportunity for me to work on the next story. Media articles are like waves. One crashes, there's always another one coming in.
Oh, yeah.
Let's work on riding that next wave and getting our positive messaging into that one.
Have you at Newport Beach had any recent incidents that tested your crisis communications plan?
Knock on wood, we have been fairly crisis free for a while now.
Knock now.
So we did our since COVID, I think one of our biggest incidents, we had some houses that were severely damaged and destroyed due to mudslides. So we had a couple eroding cliffs. So Newport Beach, we of course have our beach and harbors, and then we have hills. So we actually have some challenging landscape as you get up into the hills, because we do have some houses that were built on kind of cliffs that were maybe shored up with some, compact landfills a little bit in the 60s. And then we also have our wildfire areas. Of course, when we see one of the bluffs erode and that's damaging to houses, that's been, a big part of enacting our crisis plan to jump in and really work with multiple agencies. And that's when it becomes almost like a 2 week jig, whether we're actually in the jig or have sort of a virtual meetings. There's so many different agencies that we had to work with because it backs up onto protected state lands.
Mm.
We have our Back Bay Nature Preserve, which is the state. There's private property. There's the city element. There's county lands. I mean, there's so many things that have to come together. And then, as I said, the LA wildfires were a bit of a crisis of confidence for us because everybody was demanding to know what our city was doing. And I think we have one of the best prepared fire departments as much as you can be. But it's difficult to, kind of make help people understand that it's also a partnership. There are things that you need to do to your house to make sure that you're prepared. And so that's been a big message for us. But as far as crisis, yeah, those people losing their homes to the eroding cliffs was definitely a surprise, and one of those that just hits out of nowhere. It's fine one day and just happens the next. Yeah.
Right. Don, are there any programs or campaigns that you launch that you're particularly proud of?
It seems almost quaint now, but remember the drought? You're not in California, but we were really, really, the drought was crisis territory. And we did a great campaign that I think took elements of Newport Beach. We basically were able to localize a drought campaign, I think, in a really effective way, and had Newport Beach imagery and tried to make it a matter of civic pride. I was to try to kind of say, hey, do your part for your city. Because you start getting into the state issues and it's too abstract. I think we were able to say, hey, let's do our part, Newport, and we paired that with a new tool, an online digital system that people can see their water use in real time. So our public works department, or utilities, actually, I should say, they had finished up a multi-year campaign to get every water meter in the city digital. And we paired that with a drought water conservation campaign, and we were able to track those results in real time, which was very satisfying. We had data that we'd never had before. So that was great to see. Almost right as we succeeded in doing that, we had two great rainy years and the drought was over. But I was proud of that. And I think we were able to build in some awareness that, uh, water conservation is a way of life in California. You can't just turn your back on it when there's a good rain year.
Right. So this goes into my next question is, how do you measure whether your messages that you're putting out are resonating with the public?
Yeah, I think it really depends. It's always the hardest thing I think in our business is how do you know? You can look at some of those external things. The gold standard, of course, are our expensive surveys. When you can go out and really do it right and track, awareness and behavior prior to a campaign and then the same thing afterward. That's always it's kind of like in science, the double blind studies. We have our gold standard, but that's pricey. We can't always do that. So I have done kind of before and after online surveys to at least get a sense of kind of where people are at. I know it's kind of a biased, it kind of leans toward people who are already engaged online. So it may not be the best test of awareness, but it sometimes is a more cost effective way to do it. And I think those can also be good for testing behaviors. So you can ask people what would it take to get you to do this or make this change. Then they can kind of weigh in and you could see, all right, there's a certain population that's never going to get on board. There's a certain population that's already with you. And then you've got these middle folks that, hey, with the right message, they might be persuaded. And you can kind of drill into what those messaging might be and focus on those undecideds.
Right. Do you use any platforms or tools that you have found that have been essential to your workflow in the past couple of years? Especially because you're a one man operation, so you got a lot going on.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I could give people advice on that one. I think it's really using what works and what you need for your agency. So I don't have a universal prescription for that one. It seems like as soon as I got on the rhythm of some of these, the social media aggregators that kind of push everything out, like Hootsuite, then Facebook Meta comes up with some change in the algorithm where it's not working, or Instagram's not letting you post multiple photos. So I kind of, I think by design they're trying to push us toward Meta Business Suite. So I'm like, all right, I got on board with that, and now I'm kind of waiting to see, or is X going to be what it was? Probably not ever again. It was the place where journalists went and newsmakers, maybe not so much anymore. So, and I've tried some AI tools that kind of scour the social media landscape and let you know what's going on. There's a few different ones out there, so I don't need to name names, but I didn't for a mid-sized city like us, I just didn't find them essential.
Okay.
I feel like with a handful of tabs that I can go to in the morning, I can pretty quickly see what are, and just Google alerts. I'm getting it sent to me. I'm going out and looking. I can kind of see what's going on pretty easily. And really, the only gap that I have is, and I know sites like Critical Mention can do this, where they'll get you the broadcast news clips. So I find most of them are online now, where we can
Right.
see them that way. There's very few things that just get broadcast. So I know for some agencies that would be critical. Hey, we've got to know everything anytime we're mentioned on broadcast. For me, a lot of it's going to be traffic jams, weather, and the Real Housewives of Newport Beach. That's what I'm going to get.
The day to day things that people care about, right?
Right, right. So by kind of avoiding that, I can get get down to the news. So yeah, I don't really have that one essential tool. I think they're evolving so quickly. We all just got to keep up and try different things and experiment.
So you said you've used AI before in your in what in regards to what? How have you utilized it?
So I worked with a company for a while. A couple years. I wanted to give it a shot. It's essentially kind of uses AI to scour the social media world. So they're basically pulling they pull keywords. I mean, so it's a little bit, eh, they have these sort of proprietary algorithms. They can pull specific things. So if I wanted to see just what are people saying about the conditions on the beaches, maybe we're having some storms. I want to see how that's being responded to by people who are maybe going to come visit. I could do that. How are people responding to our new organics recycling program? I could put in those keywords. I will say it perhaps alerted me to some blind spots. So if there was something that I didn't know about, I didn't put it out there, it was bubbling up on social media, I maybe got an alert that this thing was happening. I just didn't find it all that useful. I think by the time the issues become a community concern, we're getting emailed, our council's getting emailed, and there's certain noise. I think as PIOs that it's okay to tune out. And I'll use Nextdoor as an example. A lot of times people will, how many times have you heard this is blowing up on Nextdoor? Okay, what does that mean? They're all closed systems. People are conversing with people within their own neighborhood. That's by design. Nextdoor wants it that way. They don't want government looking over people's shoulder. So if something's blowing up on Nextdoor, it's just confined to a very particular neighborhood. And unless that becomes something that gravitates, that makes its way to the city council getting emailed, people are now posting it on broader social media, okay, maybe we do need to deal with it. But for the most part, if you look at what people post on Nextdoor, it's a lot of just angry rants. And most of the
Yeah.
time, the community self polices. Someone from the community will come in and say, no, that's not been my experience. When I called the fire department, they were there in 2 minutes. I don't know what you're talking about. So again, I take all that with a grain of salt. And
Right, right.
so that's the AI platform. I think it gives you everything, but then you have to ask yourself, well, do I want it? Maybe yes, maybe no.
John, you were recently awarded the Paul B. Clark Lifetime Achievement Award by the California Association of PIOs. Congratulations, by the way. How does it
Thank you.
feel? How does that feel to be recognized by your peers?
It really felt great, and I was really honored to get that. It's funny because I've been involved in Capio for 20 years. So at the point when I started my government career, a PIO career, my boss at the time who I worked with at the Port of Long Beach, Heather Morrow, she got me involved. She said, "You got to get involved in Capio. It's great to have an association. You're going to meet people. You're going to learn so much." And she was absolutely right. It's been a great source of education and then inspiration for those years where maybe you've had a rough year. You go to the conference and you talk to other people who've had equally rough years and you commiserate. So it's been a great resource, just all around positive thing to be a part of. And so I had won, early in my career, you submit the project awards and you're like, oh yeah, my brochure got, a second place. That's awesome. And so then after a while, as you go, you're like, yeah, okay, I'll submit less of those to let other people have a chance. And maybe if there's something I'm really proud of, I'll submit those project awards these days. But that was more in the rearview mirror. And then when I was told that I was going to win this, it just was great. I think it really encompasses all of that stuff. So yes, the early stuff with the project awards, but I'm proud to have mentored some folks over the years within Capio, and that's part of what's recognized. I spent time on the board. So it's nice to be honored for that as well, for kind of recognizing ways that I've given back. And I've tried to do that. I feel like I've tried to bring my view of what our profession can be, and it's a little different than others see it, but I think it's flavored with kind of that journalism background. I bring the journalistic approach to it, and hopefully I've helped explain over the years to other people who did not come out of journalism why I think that's important, or imparting what I hope they can learn from my experience.
Right. John, so since you talked about mentoring people, what's one piece of advice that you could give to someone who's new to being a city or municipal PIO?
Well, I have two pieces, and one
Go
is
ahead.
find your association. So I think every state has a PIO type association like Capio. If you're in California, that's the one to go to, capio.org. There's also 3CMA, which is the national group. If your state or area doesn't have that, I've been less involved with a 3CMA just because I have Capio, but I'm pretty sure there's a state equivalent in most places. And it's really the best way to get real-time ongoing education. I mean, I love getting those debriefs from people who have worked incidents and being able to hear, within a few months of them working on that incident, it may still be ongoing. Now I'm in a breakout session at the conference hearing about how that went. So those are just invaluable. Some of the best, this is part two, some of the best experiences that I've had were just by raising my hand and saying yes to things, no matter how scary it was. Early on, I had a broadcast interview that the call time was 3 a.m. because we were going to go out on a boat, and it was this whole long morning that one of our local stations here, KTLA in LA, they were doing a Valentine's Day special, and they wanted somebody from the port to go along and tell them what they were seeing as they did this cruise. Now they mixed that in with all these other Valentine's Days. So it was a lot of fun. Long story short, more people saw me on that program than anything else. And I got there because I just raised my hand and said, sure, why not? No one else wanted to do it.
Right. Exactly.
The other one, which was far more serious, was I was part of a mutual aid team that supported the city of Seal Beach in 2011 when they had a mass shooting. And this was Seal Beach is a town of 24,000, with a small
Small.
police force. They're here in Orange County, and they had what is to date the largest mass shooting in Orange County history. An absolute tragedy. And in that community, everybody was connected to somebody who died. It was just such a small town, and so the police did a great job handling the immediate aftermath, but I was called in to help on the city side in terms of what they were going to need to do moving forward. So the helping to coordinate and manage things like the candlelight vigils, the donations. People wanted to donate and help, but how to do that in a way that avoids the scams. We saw all that. I mean, there was just so much to do that is outside of the police purview, and so this was just such an enriching experience to be a part of that, even in the midst of a terrible tragedy. So my advice is to say yes to things, even though it's scary. If you have the chance to join some kind of mutual aid, a joint information center for a nearby agency, just raise your hand and say yes, or give them a call and say, hey, pretty sure you can use some extra help. And in that case, don't even ask. Just say, hey, I'm coming over, and they'll appreciate that. So just get involved in as much as you can early on.
John, what's one myth about PIOs that you wish people would stop believing?
Um, I think we get conflated a lot with the folks that work on campaigns and work for politicians, where it's kind of like anything goes. I should someday watch the show Scandal. Everyone asks me if I watch that, and I guess
Yeah,
the
that's
the main character has the same last name as me, Pope. So I should probably watch that sometime. It's that kind of it's that DC kind of political intrigue.
yeah, it's a fixer, crisis fixer.
Yeah, and I do think too the folks that work on campaigns, your only metric is the victory. You are just working for this one victory, and we couldn't be more different than that because we are invested in the long term reputation and the goodwill of our community. We can't squander that on a short-term win.
Right,
So I think that's the biggest thing is that, there's a media idea about people in PR that gets conflated with the fixer, the scandal, the win at any cost. And they don't realize it's much more mundane in a sense that no, we are constantly putting out information just so people are better informed and can make better decisions about their community and establishing a relationship with local government that in previous generations they didn't need to have.
right,
People didn't People of my parents' generation didn't need to have a relationship with local government. If your streets were swept and your trash was picked up, you didn't care. But it's a different world. People want to know what's going on. They want to know how their money is being spent.
exactly. John, is there a question I should have asked? And if so, how would you have answered it?
Let's see. We covered a lot.
Yeah, we did.
So I can't really
If you
think
don't
of
have
anything.
one, that's fine. It's good.
Yeah.
You're good.
All right.
All right, so let's go to some rapid fire questions then, John. Texting or talking?
One more. Sorry. Say that again.
Texting or talking?
Ooh, have to lean toward texting. Yeah, yeah.
Movies or books?
Ooh, love them both. I devour audiobooks. I have a long commute, and so and I like to walk. So I devour audiobooks, but I love reading. I love movies.
Coffee, tea, or energy drink?
Well, definitely coffee, no question about it.
Adult drink of choice?
So my adult drink of choice has long been the old fashioned. I love a good bourbon mixed very simply, and I will say I liked them before they got
Became
popular.
trendy. Yes. Yeah.
They've gotten very trendy, it seems like, in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Which is not bad because I think, you can now get one everywhere. But, now I'm the 10th guy that hour that's ordered an old fashioned. I feel like I should say, no, I've liked these for a long time.
Right. Cats or dogs?
My daughter and I were just having this debate about cat and dog people. My daughter has two cats and they're great. They're her pets, but they're also family pets. She lives with us. So I'd have to say right now, cats.
Do you have a favorite go-to karaoke song?
Definitely Bon Jovi, "Living on a Prayer,"
If
classic
you
that
could,
everyone knows and the crowd loves it.
they do, absolutely. What would be your superpower if you could have one?
It would have to be teleportation. I would love to be able to bounce around and visit different places on a whim. Yeah, just be able to show up for a day somewhere random and get a perspective about what's going on there, especially at places that are off the beaten path. You see some of these travelers on Instagram and you're like, oh, that looks great. But to get there, it just seems like an impossibility. So yeah, to snap your fingers and be able to kind of go anywhere just to get a little taste of it would be amazing.
If you could instantly become an expert in one thing, what would it be?
Music. I think I have so much admiration for people who have devoted their lives to the study of music and who are deep into it. I'm very much an amateur, and I think once you are something of a learned amateur in something, you realize the depth of the gap between you and the experts, and that's a tremendous one. I have a lot of respect for people that are experts in music.
Ask permission or beg for forgiveness?
Very situational. I really do think it depends on, and it's not a cop out. It definitely depends on the situation, but all things being equal, I would lean toward ask for forgiveness.
What's your favorite way to relax after a long day?
So after a long day, I have a couple things I like to do. I'll play guitar sometimes if I'm in the mood. I have an acoustic, and I will. I also like to do woodworking. So I have a little shop in my garage where I'll make little projects.
If you could choose to have coffee with any historical figure alive or dead, who would it be?
Man, lately I've been thinking it would have to be. I would probably choose Abraham Lincoln, and I'd love to just ask him where he thought things were going to go post Civil War and how that reconciled with his thoughts on how things would be. You think about historical figures that were alive for a certain time, and you think, what do you think about where this went?
Hmm.
So I think that'd be fascinating.
John, final thoughts. What key points would you like listeners to take from this interview?
Just that I think based on my own experience, I feel like I've had a very enriching and exciting career doing this. And again, a lot of that's been being at the right time and the right place to be able to kind of raise my hand and say yes to things. So always do a little bit more than the basics because those are what you're going to remember. It's kind of those home runs, you can be a great singles and doubles hitter and we need to do that. We need to hit the singles. We need to get on base more often than not, but sometimes you do need to swing for those home runs and be like, yeah, it's kind of scary, but I'm going to go ahead and do this and see how it unfolds. I also think being part of a community is huge, no matter how you get that, whether it's, building a network among your local agencies or being in some sort of regional or state or national association. That community is huge. And I think you're doing that here too. So I appreciate you having me on and what you're doing to kind of build a community among PIOs nationwide. I think this is a great resource and it gives us a perspective on different types of PIO work too. I mean, what I do is very different than what police and fire do, responding to incidents versus
And that's
kind
why
of
that was
everyday
the whole
stuff.
reason for doing this was to
Yeah.
give that perspective across the board because it is so unique.
Yeah.
John, as we wrap this up, is there a piece of wisdom or a motto you live by?
No, not really. I wish I had
All right,
something for.
that's okay. Last question. How do people best reach out if they want to follow up or connect with you on something that they've heard?
Yeah, that would be great. So, jpope at newportbeachca.gov. is my email.
That's
That'd be the
perfect.
best way, and we can get a conversation going from there. So please do. I appreciate that.
And I will add all that into the show notes.
Excellent. Yeah.
John, thank you very much for being on the show.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it.